Sarah, tell us what's the atmosphere been like, and have the crowds been supportive on the whole? How many people are out there?
Well, we've had huge crowds here at Jane throughout the day, and from very early on this morning, they started building on the Royal Mile in Edinburgh to catch a glimpse of the King and the Queen and William and Kate, the Duke and Duchess of Rothesay, as they're known when they're in Scotland, arrive at St Giles Cathedral behind me, packed as deep as you could get along the Royal Mile, and very supportive in atmosphere. But just outside St Giles Cathedral as well was a protest position, and we saw campaigners from the anti-monarchy group Republic gathered there. They say there were around 300 of them who had arrived here in Edinburgh for this protest, shouting "Not My King." And certainly during the ceremony taking place in the cathedral, when the music stopped and in the quiet moments, you could hear those chants of "Not My King" inside the cathedral. But they were peaceful protests by and large. There's a very heavy police and security presence here in Edinburgh. More protests also at the Palace of Holyrood House, where the King and Queen are in residence during their week in Scotland, but generally very supportive. And it's interesting, really, because when you talk about the coronation, 3/4 of Scottish people didn't bother watching it, weren't interested in watching it. There's around 46% of support for the monarchy here in Scotland, so a little bit more lukewarm. But on the streets of Edinburgh, at least today, very much a celebratory atmosphere. Looking at the face of the King in the cathedral, he looked pretty relaxed and happy, certainly a lot more relaxed than he did on May the 6th during the coronation ceremony in Westminster Abbey. And this was a mini coronation. Look, we had the crown jewels, Scotland's crown jewels, being presented before him. We didn't get a moment of crowning, but we certainly got a Penny Mordaunt moment from Dame Catherine Granger, carrying the new sword of state, the Elizabeth sword, which weighs twice as much as that sword that was carried by Penny Mordaunt in Westminster Abbey, 7.5 kilos. So that Olympic rowing training will definitely have come in useful today for that.
Yes, well, she was a very good choice for that role. So, Ediza, I've got a great quote here from the co-leader of the Scottish Greens. He called today's celebration an overpriced Game of Thrones cosplay exercise. So, I mean, not everybody is completely on board with it, are they?
No, they're not. And actually, the sword did look like something from Game of Thrones, Jane. They're certainly not. And the anti-monarchy campaigners also describing this as a completely pointless vanity exercise. There were criticisms over the cost of today, paid for by the Scottish government and therefore the taxpayer, at the cost of the sword, which was £22,000 to be made new. That raised some eyebrows. But that will become part of the crown jewels, and if it lasts anything like the others that we've seen here display, hopefully be carried on for many, many centuries. But yes, you are right, there has been concern, and the Scottish Greens not alone in those feelings, but you didn't get that feeling. Of course, if you're going to turn out on the streets of Edinburgh for something like this and you're going to stand in queue, you're going to be a royal fan, really, aren't you? You're going to be on one side of the divide or other. You're either going to be a fan or you're going to be someone who's very anti.